Hello and a warm welcome to this special episode of Bioscope called Industry Focus. Our attempt this week would be to take you inside the historic double strike in Hollywood. What are they fighting for? How long will this battle go on? What are its implications globally and for the Indian industry in particular? Taking us through all this is none other than Anjum Rajabali, senior screenwriter, as well as the executive member of Screenwriters Association.
If your name is not there and if you've written a film which perhaps has done reasonably well, but your name doesn't feature there, you don't get work because nobody knows that you wrote it. For them, it is कि भैया ये product करना है, assembly line बनाना है, whether it is a shop floor or whether it is, people knitting a bloody thing for Nike or making a shoe or, job work. What is the goddamn difference? It's the same thing, product बना रहा है यार तुम. इतना क्या तुम चिल्ला रहे? Why are you so central to it? But the script is primary. Creativity, because creativity involves a discovery of the human condition which is hidden within. AI doesn't know how to do that. And then you add masala, you add the twists and turns, you add that kind of thrill, which absolutely can be done. But baat wo reh jata. Then this is what you expect from that and that. So it actually impoverishes the audience. That is the big danger. If the writer doesn't do her job, the producer doesn't have a job. The executive doesn't have a job. There is no job. There is no film industry. There is no streamer. There is nothing if there is no script.
The thing is, Anjum, we're talking at a very interesting point when Wednesday was when the sorry figure of 100 days of WGA strike was reached. And I think I read somewhere of it being called the milestone of shame. So without much ado, first of all, I want to know from you, when is it going to end? Are there any signs? What's happening?
Very difficult to say, Namrata, about that. What I do know is only one side, which is WGA, and they are determined to go right down to the ropes. What they have asked for, I don't think is so much the issue. The issue is the different approach to what a writer is worth. So it isn't that the studios and platforms don't have the money, they do. It's been repeated very often and sometimes in a very mocking tone that just the annual salaries of the top 8 executives of these companies, even if you were to take what WJ is asking for from their salaries, they would still walk away with $63 million per year. Okay, that's how much they're being paid. So it's not that they don't have the money. It is, I think the time has come where they feel that the bargaining power of the writers, particularly the collective bargaining power, has to be broken, has to be contained, because this, they believe, is actually then demanding what the writers believe that they are worth. And this has never been, the companies have never been very comfortable with this, neither there nor here. So there is a certain attitudinal thing. There is a whole economic structure that we are talking about, what ordinarily is called the capitalist society, where the people who bring the capital believe that they are the ones who should be determining. And that's the kind of language I face here too. That if we are paying the money, then we decide what is it that you get and what credit you get, which completely destroys the very basic status of the writer's contribution. So I'm not so sure that there is a quick end in sight. Because if the studios were to buckle here, if they were to blink, it reverses what they are actually proposing, that we need to reinforce this inequality, let me put it, in bargaining power, that they need to hold the reins. So I'm rather unsure at the moment about where this is going.
Because, a longer strike is also kind of really scary to think of in terms of, people being out of jobs. Forget about us as viewers thinking about the content or the lack of it, that lies ahead in the future, the big films around the corner, whether we are going to see them, when are we going to see them. But I think brass tacks of it, the basics of it is that ultimately it's the writers themselves, the creative people themselves who are going to bear the brunt of it, right?
So that is what happens with every strike, no? I mean, in Bombay, you saw the historic textiles workers strike in 1982, which went on for some 2.5 years. So did writers suffer? Yes, but there were certain issues that you need to learn to fight for. So you give up short-term gains to be able to not just ensure long-term gains and secure your future, but also ensure that there's no reversal of that. So it is finally at the bottom line, Namrata, it's about bargaining power. That you have to reduce the inequality in the bargaining power. Only then can any fair exchange be possible. The writers are bringing in something, the studios are bringing something. It has to be a fair exchange, and there has to be a certain equity there. And that is exactly, at the basic fundamental level, that's what we are fighting from all over the world. It is
if
reduce that disparity.
Yeah. So, Anjum, if one were to look at the various stages in these 100 days of the strike, how crucial would you say is the so-called entry in July of the Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA also joining? Is it crucial? Is it important? How do you rate that?
See, the point is that their contract came to an end and they had to then begin their negotiations again. And that is where they decided to go on strike. So in this particular case, it's not that the longevity of SAG-AFTRA's sort of action is only in solidarity. It so happened. You see, earlier what you had seen is, you remember in 2007, the Golden Globes also got cancelled. Okay, the actors got onto the street and marched with them. They stood at picket lines. Here also some of them have. But this time round, it's primarily the WGA and its 11,500 members. Those who are MBA signatories. They're the ones who will have to show the sustaining power to pull this off, because I don't know about the Directors Guild and the Actors Guild. In case the studios use a strategy to sort of negotiate with them to, blunt their thing or to resolve it, in which case then WGA gets isolated. But WGA has always been prepared for that. It was never counting on any solidarity from any other union. So, and it is strong enough. This I do know because I've known them closely since 2011. Okay, very closely, virtually meeting them every year at the annual general meeting of the International Affiliation of Writers Guilds, where a lot of us sort of stand together, the guilds from across the world. So I do know that they're determined. And do they have the even the financial muscle? Their funds and their reserves are huge, enormous. So in that sense, and they're determined. When you say that more than 98% voted in favor of the strike, and you don't see any dissenting voices, even some subtle murmurs. No, you don't. They're still very determined, because they went over this over 6 months. And finally, when they took a decision, it was with complete clarity and transparency, because the WGA has been very open about its demands and very open about the counters which they have received, or lack of them. So in that sense, they are in for the long fight.
So, breaking it down to the demands, it's the general perceptions, and maybe you can elaborate on that, is, the payment, the way the payment happened, the rights and royalty, credits, and the conditions of work. Is that what the ambit of the demands is largely all about?
No, there's it's slightly different. This is more relevant what you said. More applies to us, and we'll come to that.
Which we'll come to later.
For them, it is essentially, it is the increase in minimums that they are asking for. Okay, because what has happened, Namrata, is that the total quantum of fees annually that writers have received in Hollywood has increased, in fact, quite a bit over the years, ever since the streamers came in, because the opportunities opened up. But the average pay per writer has reduced drastically. And if you account for inflation, I think over the last decade, it's reduced by almost 25-30%. That means the writers are earning much less than what they did 10 years ago, by 30%. You see, so this definitely is a stark fact that the studios need to take into account. So therefore, they're asking for an increase in minimums, which is not that much. The total outlay that they're asking for all across the industries would come to about 413 million. And what the AMPTP is offering is about 86 million. Okay, that's the one thing, the residuals. Now, there are details about that because they've broken it down to how much it should be, 2%, 5%, 5% across various categories. So those details we don't have to go into. Plus, there is a certain formula that WGA has worked out, which AMPTP is completely aware of, because this is how they generally do every 3 years when the negotiations take place. So that is the one thing that they're talking about. The second thing also is that, see, as a union, you not only have to fight to secure better positions and better pay scales for your members, but also to ensure employment. You see, because what has happened is that there's been a certain fragmentation in terms of the employment structure that the streamers are especially offering. So a lot of the writers, they would rather hire on a daily rate basis. A lot of them are only per episode, that I'm hiring you for this particular episode. After that, you're out. Okay, then there are those mini rooms that they have created, especially to fragment this whole thing. So as a result of which, what is happening is that there is no security that the writer feels. And even if you do an episode, Namrata, as you well know, I mean, having been such a critic for such a long time, that the amount of effort which goes in is not just restricted to that one episode, because the episode is part of an entire story and the character arcs and journeys, and you need to be able to fit that in. So the amount of work which is going in is far more than just the writing of that particular, 40-minute. So as a result of which, WJ is also saying that you need to extend that. There has to be a certain guarantee in that. Plus, writers do have occupied the position of becoming writer-producers. So they're arguing for that. So essentially, they're also trying to ensure that there is some employment security. There's also a raise in minimums and residuals, which is very, very important for them. And then we are coming to the third thing, which is the tricky part, which is the artificial intelligence.
Absolutely, absolutely.
See, and there is definitely a need to look at it very seriously in the storytelling industry. It is a very critical shadow which seems to be looming, and it's going to happen in India much, much faster than we are realizing.
America sneezes, the rest of the world has to catch cold, So coming to the Indian side of it, and my attention was drawn primarily sometime in June when the Right Draft 2023, which Omax and Tulsi kind of partnered on, and it was released, the survey of about 217 film and TV writers across all languages, Hindi, English, and the 4 South languages, Telugu, Tamil, Kannada, Malayalam. Before I kind of get into the nitty-gritty of it, just kind of throwing these figures for our viewers, that 65% of the people who were kind of talked to said that though there was a raise in pay, but 63% pointed out that they are not paid fully. 47% of those surveyed was talking about how the timeliness of it gets affected, the payments. There were 91% who spoke about the hybrid model of payment, which is a certain fixed amount and incentives on top of that. But they say that about 31% said that only 31% said that they were offered contracts of this sort. 53% dissatisfied with the credit, but 90% saying that OTT seem to be better off than the film production, houses. Now, these are figures, cold figures, which kind of don't make sense at a larger level to me. We need to understand the nuances in terms of what is going on in Hollywood. So my question is that Screenwriters Association, since you have contacts with WGA, how has your support been? Because I did read that some US-based films and web series, there was a kind of notice given to the members saying to try and avoid working in them. But what has been the larger, way in which SWA has joined the WGA efforts?
See, as I mentioned, there is the International Affiliation of Writers Guilds, okay, which is all the important guilds of the world are all members of that. So are we. I mean, in fact, SWA is part of the core group, which is the policy research group there. So while each individual guild has their own decisions, their own policy, their own actions, which they take independently of IAWG, but this becomes a solidarity body also, apart from other things, apart from discussing various other key issues. In that, yes, they did have a huge discussion when we met last October for the previous AGM in Denmark. And WG outlined this, that they fear that they might be headed towards a breakdown in negotiation, but fingers are crossed. They were going to move in January into the negotiations. And they kept us informed. Now, each member of the affiliation expressed their solidarity number one, which is basically you're giving your words to that. Then some of us told our members that you have to stop working for US-based shows. I mean, you can work for Disney here, but you can't work for Disney there. Now, there aren't that many Indian writers working there, but there are a few, very few, a handful. So the mail went out to them also that we need to show solidarity with them, and we need to ensure that the strike strengthens. Now, there was, apart from the letters and press statements which I made on behalf of SWA about aligning ourselves with the strike and saying we are completely in solidarity and we agree with all which has happened and we want them to succeed and we believe they will. Apart from that, there was also an action, I think it was on June 14th, that outside Netflix, Disney and Amazon, that said that we need to picket and we need to have those banners showing our solidarity with the WGA strike. So with SWA decided that we would do that. So we went in Bombay, we stood outside the Netflix office at Bandra Kurla Center, and we were raised slogans. The media came, press was called, we got wide coverage, etc. Essentially to show solidarity, so that it's a shot in their arm. It's not going to affect the negotiations, let's face it. Okay, because there is not that kind of sort of intersection is not there between the Indian, whatever counterparts of those AMPTP signatories and the US ones. What is important here is what relevance does the WGA strike have on the Indian situation?
Absolutely.
It does, actually. Given that the fight has gone down to the ropes, and given what they're asking for is fairly resonant to also some of the points with what we are fighting for. Basically, minimums there's a certain employment guarantee. AI is going to become an issue in about 6 months or so. It's going to become pretty central in the Indian context. So if that works out, and most of their counterparts are here. Number two, Namrata, I want to bring something up here, which sounds a little too political, because it is. See, those same companies, multinational corporations, whether you're talking about the streamers, or whether you're talking about big studios, broadcasters, whose headquarters are in America. All this while, they have been signatories to certain clauses, certain whatever negotiations which have taken place with the WG, and they've been okay with that, right? And I'll come to that. Those same clauses, those same rights, when we're fighting for here, they're very resistant to that. So it becomes these double standards that on the one hand, your own people, I mean, your American companies, so the American writers are being treated differently than the Indian writers from the same companies. I mean, we see completely contrasting, actions and attitude. And this is also, so therefore, if that succeeds, it makes our case also here stronger. It is already very strong, and we do intend to sit across the table in about a month or so. We intend to begin negotiations in September. But the fact is that this will matter. If they win, frankly, it may not matter as much. It'll matter, but not as much. But if they lose, then we have a problem. You see, because then what happens is that if you were able to, get WGA to back off, and I don't mean blink, okay, you sit at the table, you arrive at a compromise that, okay, instead of 429 million that you're asking for, we're offering 86, let's come down to say 300. or 350. And is this acceptable? Okay, come on, let's break the deadlock. Let's go ahead with this. But it has to be a victory. So I don't mean that it has to be brittle, but it has to be a victory. If it is not, it will have an effect, that sneezing effect that you're talking about. That if they blink, then my eyes fall over. Yeah. It doesn't mean that I won't fight. We will continue to fight, and we will dig our heels in. There is no question, because we believe that what we are fighting for, regardless of the rest of the guilds of the world, regardless of how companies are behaving elsewhere, including in Hollywood, what we are fighting for is just, is fair. Okay, in which case we will continue to do that. But that would have helped. This would dampen that.
So what you are referring to is that minimum basic agreement that you're fighting for. Is that it, if I can understand correctly?
What we're asking for is, we call it the minimum basic contract, actually, because contract.
Okay.
Now, see, there's a difference there. WGA has been with the MBA for about well over 5 decades, 5 to 6 decades. Okay, so that's become a standard practice, which means collective bargaining as a protocol, as a convention, has been accepted. Now the studios don't have a problem negotiating with WGA on behalf of that. Here, that itself is a problem. Okay, the companies have never been comfortable with having a direct negotiation or discussion with a representative organization like SWA. They would prefer individuals to deal with it. And you can imagine why, because the bargaining power completely rests in the hands of the companies. They have been doing so. Number two, the companies there, in the freest market, or in an economy which completely is based on the market, where you have, freedom to trade, individual negotiations, and the market decides how much labor is worth, etc., and where there is no sort of imposition by an organization which says that certain minimums will have to be paid. They have no problem agreeing to minimums. They have no problem agreeing to certain residuals there collectively. Okay, they don't call it monopolistic practice, or even if they do, they agree with that. Here, they have a problem with that, because the argument being, how can you do that? That depends upon the individual worth of the writer. Why is it that we should, across the board, agree to a certain safety level of minimum pay? So what we're asking for is not that we have a full MBA which both parties sign. In their case, they do that. It's about more than 800-page MBA. Which covers every single possibility, every single contingency. WGA in its own employ has more than a dozen lawyers, employed full-time lawyers working for them. And we're talking top-notch people there. WGA itself has something like almost 191 employees, from what I understand. Okay, there. So they're a huge monolith. We're not that yet. So we're not asking for an MBA actually to be signed. What we're saying is that there are certain clauses which need to be standardized. Now, there are about 12 clauses which stick in our throat. What we are moving into right now are 6 of them, the 6 important ones. Okay, and this is in consultation with a large number of writers and seniors within our industry who we have consulted. And I've also consulted personally, because I head the contracts committee at SW. And this is what I have been sort of involved in since 2009, actually. So what we're asking for is for them to agree as individual corporations. There is no AMPTP here. The Film and Television Producers Guild is not a union, actually, or an association of that. They're basically like a loose federation, like a lobbying organization, which they do. Even the IFPTC, which is there, which is the television, broadly speaking, those producers, by and large, they're not. I mean, they can't declare a policy and expect every company to follow that, because the companies have their own individual thing. Here they don't have that organization. There in AMPTP, you have something like 750 of them. All the biggies are there. So it becomes easier for WGA to negotiate. Here, I have to go to every individual company. Fair enough. That's the reality. I have no problem with that. So to answer your question, what we're asking for is an agreement on certain basic clauses which are pain points for writers. And I can come to that in a moment. We want an agreement on that these will be standardized. Writers should not have to argue for that because this basic protection they should be getting.
And what is this basic protection next about all those elements which are crucial here?
See, the first thing is the two things that a writer essentially works for. Essentially, money and credit. With the money, she runs her kitchen, runs her household, pays the EMIs, okay, pays her staff, that rent. So that. And with the credit, you have a career. So your future is protected. Because based on your work, this is an industry this is not a job. This is not like a company giving you a salary. This is your work gets you your work. So if your name is not there and if you've written a film which perhaps has done reasonably well, but your name doesn't feature there, you don't get work because nobody knows that you wrote it. So there has to be a certain assurance that if I have a certain significant contribution in this, then I should get that credit. Now, what are we asking for? For us, at the moment, the most important thing is credit. Then comes the money. So what we're asking for is that if in the final product, which appears on the screen, so you have a film, say, oh my God, okay, like OMG 2, which has just been released. Now, there are 3 writers in there. Now, I don't know how many more may have contributed. I'm taking the hypothetical example. The important thing is not what the producer assured each writer that I will give you top credit or I will give you second credit or I will make sure that you get a credit. The important thing is that in the final product that has appeared, in the final film which has appeared, whose writing is that? So we want a certain minimum there. There should be in the final film, at least 33% of the final film should be the contribution of a writer. And if it is, then the person gets credit in there. So we're saying that we should cut off that at 3 credits per element. Now in India, we have story, screenplay, dialogue. Oftentimes, it is also separate. So 3 credits for story, 3 credits for screenplay, and 3 credits for dialogue is what we're asking for, not more than that. And there is a reason for that, which I will come to when we come to the royalty clause. Now here, we're saying that no matter if one of them is a very senior writer, say I mean, I've been around for 31 odd years, okay. Now, obviously, if there's an ex-student of mine who's writing, there's no comparison in terms of seniority. I mean, I've been around 31 years, that person's been around like 1 year. But if his contribution is more than mine, then he should get the top credit. Then it cannot be my seniority. It cannot be that the producer knows me or wants me for his next film. So it has to be done clearly based on the contribution. Now, how to judge this contribution? I'm putting it to you, Namrata, plainly. The producer is not in a position to judge that. Because the producer is not aware of how many drafts were written, that Anjum wrote so many drafts, Sudhir wrote so many drafts, so-and-so drafts, and there's a certain comparison. So the arbitration of credit in times of a dispute has to be done by experts who understand how to measure that contribution. And therefore, what we're asking for is that in case of a dispute, the conflict should come to SWA. We have a certain system in place already, the credit arbitration system, wherein those scripts and the drafts, the shooting script and the individual drafts of those individual writers, it goes to 3 senior writers who are knowledgeable, who will be able to compare it, and they will come out with a decision which fulfills the formula that SWA is proposing, that if the contribution in the final film is not above 1/3, you don't get a credit. If it's above 50%, you get the top credit. If it's above 66%, you get a solo credit. And this is how it has to be. Because what is happening here is that I don't suffer. I'm a senior writer. In fact, I sometimes might be offered an unfair share of the credit. Can any say, Anjum ji, aap to senior ho, तो नाम तो ऊपर हाथी का आना चाहिए, नहीं तो आपका नाम नीचे आएगा तो कितना खराब दिखता है. It's not about खराब दिखता. It's about what we have done there. So we don't suffer. Seniors rarely suffer. It is the new writers who suffer. And this is, you will notice that 53% of that report that you read out just now, 53% of writers complain that they are unhappy with this. This is very, very serious. Then more than half the people are feeling that they've been denied their due credit. I mean, this is a disease. This has to be nipped in the bud. So we are saying producers who ordinarily have had this overriding clause in their contract. It's a standard clause. What does it say? You're being hired for writing the screenplay, this is how much will be paid, blah, 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 blah. And in the end, there is this overriding clause which says that the final credit will be at the discretion of the producer. We're saying no, cannot.
Mhm.
Because the discretion of the producer has all kinds of other extraneous factors coming in, like the seniority, like what you may have promised me, like the fact that you might be needing me for your next film, like I have a 4-film contract with you, all like you might be my friend. Okay, none of these factors have to come in. Credit means ye kaam kiska hai. That's all. So first thing is the credit. See what is happening, what SW is embarking on doing is breaking a certain tradition.
Mhm.
It's causing a certain disturbance in the established conventions. And the established conventions, unfortunately, we are finding exceedingly iniquitous for writers. Okay, पहला जमाना वो अलग था शायद, वजाहत मिर्जा और ये सारे थे, हम भी जब आए थे अर्ली 90s में वगैरह, वो एक रिश्तों पे बात चलती थी कि भैया बात कर रहे हो इंडिपेंडेंट प्रोड्यूसर से, हाँ नहीं सर ऑफ कोर्स बिल्कुल वो जो आप बोलोगे उस हिसाब से अपन कर लेंगे, उसके अंदर क्या हो गया, आपने लिखा है आपको मिलना चाहिए, उसके अंदर कोई हर्ज नहीं, वो उस तरीके से रिश्तों में हो जाता था. Thank you very much. All that has come now. Now you have these executives sitting there. You have corporate policy. Netflix says that, "Bhaiya, this is how our mandate is," and this that. Well, thank you very much. Your mandate is being unjust to me, and I cannot accept that. Just because of your ease of doing business, that you say that the discretion will be mine because you don't want a dispute on your hands. So you want to ensure that whatever is most comfortable for you, what you believe is just, is what you will do. Well, thank you very much. That may not actually be just because you're not qualified to do that. And we don't want you to do that. So this is number one. Okay, there's an whole elaborate process that we have worked out, and this is what we intend to take to the table. And we have to ensure that we don't back off on this. And I'm not backing off on this. Number one. Number two, there is a large quantum of writers today who are writing on spec, which is not what it was, say, about 20 years ago. And it was SW's whole effort to ensure that more and more people do spec writing, because as a result of which the quality and the caliber of writing will go up. When you wait for an assignment and instructions from the director or producer coming in, then you start writing, you are a munim, basically. And we're not munim. So therefore, we discourage that practice, saying you write on your own, have your own vision, etc. Fine. Now, the point is that there are just many writers who are around. So if you really look at purely in terms of quantity, not necessarily in terms of quality, supply is outstripping the demand. Right. So what that does is that the people who create the demand, which is the companies, etc., they are in a position to decide kitna milega, kitna nahi milega. So a lot of writers are being underpaid. You see, they might write films which are worth crores of rupees, they might write series, etc., which have big stars or big production values, and basically this budget is large. And yet what they're getting is nothing. Why? Because they consider themselves bechara. कि भैया काम तो मिल रहा है, चलो जो भी है लिख लो. So this whole desperation has been created by this attitude that we will decide. So these people become desperate, give it to us. Namrata, what is a negotiation? A negotiation, as you well know, is essentially two needs colliding. It is the writer's need to write and have his work made. It is the producer's need to acquire a script so that he can continue his business. Now, the point is both these needs are equal. If the writer doesn't do her job, the producer doesn't have a job. I mean, the executive doesn't have a job. There is no job. There is no film industry. There is no streamer. There is nothing if there is no script. But what happens here is that the writer is made to feel needy, as a result of which she is agreeing to, अच्छा ठीक है भैया जितना भी दे रहे हो दे दो, उसका ये है कि भैया मेरा नाम आ जाएगा, 2-3 फिल्में हो जाएगी, उसके बाद मेरा करियर चल जाएगा. This has been the tradition all along कि भैया आपको क्रेडिट मिल रहा है ना, आगे आपका फ्यूचर बन जाएगा ना, आपको मैं ब्रेक दे रहा हूं. No one's giving anyone a break. You need his writing, but you will undervalue his writing. You will make him feel undervalued. You will make him feel needy. So we want a safety minimum. So what I'm asking for is for a film that no film should have a script which is valued under 12 lakh.
Okay.
So that is the minimum that we are asking for. Okay, 12 lakh से नीचे भैया आप नहीं राइटर को स्क्रिप्ट के लिए पैसा दे सकते हो. Total I'm talking about, story, screenplay, dialogue. उसके अंदर अगर आप देखो तो it is 3 for story. अगर अलग अलग लिख रहे हो तो 3 for story, 5 for screenplay, and 4 for dialogue. This is the minimum that we are asking for. Okay, factor this into your budget. Don't come out to make a film until you have this writing budget with you at least. Okay, is there likely to be some attrition? Is there likely to be that certain things don't work out? You might have to engage somebody else. Yeah, quite likely. But if you don't have a good script, the rest of your film is zero. So you start investing in the script, start apportioning, appropriate budgets for that. So the minimum that we're asking for is 12. That is the second thing. Number third thing is termination. Now what happens here is that the copyright law, in spite of a very progressive amendment which took place in 2012, there is an ambiguity there. Certain contingencies have not been clarified because certain scenarios have not been foreseen at that time. Even though the thrust, the intent was very positive. The intent was in favor of writers, which we are very grateful for. But here what is happening is that if copyright is created the moment you put pen to paper, then in which case you become the first owner of your work. And then that work, you transfer the rights in that work to the producer so that he can go ahead, make his film, do the adaptations, whatever else, other monetization that he wishes to do. So he becomes the second owner. Now here what is happening is that what the producer is asking for is that there should not be an assignment of rights contract. There should only be a work for hire. That means you're a hired pen, in which case you have no ownership of the work. So which means midway through already before you put pen to paper, if you sign the contract and accept the signing amount, the rights in whatever you're going to write has already been transferred to that. You understand what that puts the writer in a very vulnerable position. Because after a draft, first draft that he works on, which might have worked out rather well, and the producer realizes, "Ha, bhaiya, ye to baat meri ban gayi, but I've only paid him 30%. I don't need to pay him more because meri baat to ban gayi." So you cut it off. You say, "Okay, I'm terminating the contract for creative differences," or as they write in the contract, that the contract can be terminated for no reason whatsoever. That's the language. Okay, you realize kind of what is going on here, the inequality. For no reason whatsoever, if it is terminated, then all the rights are already transferred to the producer anyway. Then the producer here is going to decide तुमको credit मिलना चाहिए कि नहीं मिलना चाहिए, which has been the convention until now. आगे का पैसा तुम्हारे को मिलेगा नहीं, तुम्हारा तो काम चला गया ना, सारा का सारा चला गया. So what are the safeguards? We want safeguards. So we want that in case of termination, there will not be an arbitrary implication here. There will actually be documented implication that based on the amount of work that has been used in the final film, you will be paid proportionately for that. Supposing I give you a first draft for which I've been paid 30%, but finally I do realize that more than 66% of the work is mine, you jolly well pay me the full amount of that and make sure that my credit is there. Hence, once again, both these things, money and credit, have to be protected in case of a termination. So essentially the termination, there has to be a certain safeguard. That is the third thing that we're looking for.
The mode of work. So I hope that the fourth clause and the fifth and the sixth would perhaps be in that direction.
Namrata, as I said, there are 12 clauses which bug us. Okay. At the moment, we are taking up those which we feel are the most critical at this stage to push those through. Then as the negotiations proceed, as the renewal comes up, okay, we will ensure that we can actually build in certain other things like conditions of work, for example. Okay. Right now, no, but we can speak about that by all means, okay? And that is being done at not necessarily at the SWA level, but it's being done like us writers by themselves, yes, are certainly concerned about that. And if you are senior enough and you have the leverage, then you fight for that to ensure that that is... see this, I'll tell you what you said about the historical evolution of the, not just the script writing, but the way in which writing was done. Ab hua ye ke it's with increased corporatization. What has happened, therefore, is storytelling as a motivation for the producer has reduced to nothing. Earlier, you had your big producers, etc., who were excited by कि भैया ये कहानी बहुत अच्छी है, ये कहानी तो बोलनी चाहिए. I mean, Shapurji Palanji, when he supported K. Asif, for example, he was hugely excited by the story of Mughal-e-Azam, which Asif Saab went and narrated to him, and he felt ये film बननी चाहिए. ये फिल्म बननी चाहिए, and he put his money there without any calculation कि भैया इतना पैसा आएगा, इतना नहीं आएगा, नहीं आएगा. नहीं, ये अच्छी कहानी है, मेरे दिल को छू रही है, तो मुझे लगता है कि भैया दूसरों को भी छूएगी. I love your vision, and I'm sure people will be quite, enthralled with that. So there was that faith in the story and the storytelling of that, which they believed is what is going to connect with the audience's heart. Today, it's become industrialized and commercialized, as a result of which it's a product. Okay, so therefore,
content, as they say, right?
Yeah, content they keep calling it. They will refuse to call it script or film. Content. तो वो content में आप जब script देते हो तो वो marketing वाला भी देखता है, finance वाला भी देखता है. Then they have no parameters in terms of the merit of the story because they're not creative people. But their decisions and their at least their views matter a hell of a lot, whether the film should be confirmed or not confirmed. So they will work out the whole chart. Okay, these boxes are being ticked, this is being done, this was done earlier, so this is likely to work. Okay, that actor did that role, so he's going to work in this role because the audience is accepting that. Because they're not going by the merit of the story. They're not going by the merit of the craft, because that is not what they don't understand that. A lot of the studio executives, I'm sorry to say this, also don't understand that, which is why they're very tentative about that unless and until certain commercial factors get attached to a script, like a director says yes or a star gets attached, until then they don't confirm the script. ये कहानी पे तुम्हारे को ये जोर है कि ये कहानी चलेगी, सर ये कहानी पसंद है. That culture has gone out. As a result of it, what has happened is that the value, not just of the story, but also of the writer, becomes like you're one cog in the whole thing. Okay. Now, which is crazy, because if you're building a building, which is also completely commercial and industrial process, okay, with brick and mortar and concrete you're talking about, there the architect is central. That you hire a good architect who understands that कि भैया यहाँ hillside पे बनाना है, किस किस्म के लोग आके रहेंगे, ये रहेंगे. He is actually looking at the experience of the people who are going to go and live there, and based on that experience, he's going to design the building with the lighting, with the pillars, with the size, shape, light, brightness, view, etc. Keeping in mind that, now that becomes a creative experience. Now here, कि writer के दिल से बात निकली है नम्रता, और audience के दिल तक पहुंच गई, ये connection टूट गया. ये कनेक्शन चला गया. तो यू गो बाय सर्टेन कोल्ड फिगर्स एंड ग्रिड्स एंड ये चलेगा, वो नहीं चलेगा, वो नहीं चलेगा, एक्सेट्रा. फाइनेंस में इतना होगा, इतना नहीं होगा. Now you're in the creative industry. Risk is endemic. It is inherent to it. But वो risk तोड़ने के उसमें चक्कर में, to protect the bottom line and be answerable to your shareholders of whatever it is that they are accountable to, तुम्हारी कहानी का जो actually the reason why you're telling a story, वो central नहीं रहा. वो central नहीं इसके अंदर. So which is why a fragmentation हो गया है इसके अंदर. It's become a product. So therefore, when you look at working conditions, you look at all those things, for them it is कि भैया ये product करना है, assembly line बनाना है, whether it is a shop floor or whether it is people knitting a bloody thing for Nike or making a shoe or job work. What is the goddamn difference? It's the same thing. Product बना रहा है यार तुम, इतना क्या तुम चिल्ला रहे? Why are you so central to it? But the script is primary. The script is primary. उसके बिना तुम्हारा कुछ नहीं होगा. तो वो primacy जो है वो नहीं आती है. They look at the commercial thing where the actor becomes primary. If the director is given a success, then the director becomes primary. Okay, the plot becomes primary if the plot follows a certain market precedent. क्या ये चल रहा है, ये शादी का ये चल रहा है, इसका म्यूजिक का इतना मिलेगा, उसका उतना मिलेगा, ओवरसीज में ये चल रहा है, कार्तिक आर्यन को ले लेंगे तो ये चल जाएगा. That is what becomes primary then. You see, ये जो है एक integrity, that it is everybody here is engaged to tell the story, right from the finance executive to the marketing person to the poster designer to the exhibitor to the writer to the director to the technicians, the gaffer, the light man. They're all here to make sure that this story experience reaches the audience and moves them so that they feel enthralled कि हाँ भैया एक deep satisfaction मिला, मजा आया इसका. ये जो है ना, ये चली the corporatization coming in, you see. और AI के आने से नम्रता, we're looking at something dire. We're looking at something dire. Can we talk about that?
Sure enough. Why not? Tell me more. Make me more scared of my own future.
देख इसमें ऐसा, it is no, it's not about fear. I mean, इतना वो dramatic नहीं बोलूंगा. लेकिन again, the whole approach what is a story? ये approach जब है, when you're the definition of a story, जब कहानी की परिभाषा बदल जाती है, then the approach to writing changes. Okay, so here again, if you're seeing that, what is a script? I mean, if I have to define it in a very clinical, sterile way, a script is essentially that you have a character, you bring in a certain plot problem that the character faces. The character then takes action, struggles with the plot makes it difficult for him, and there is a dramatic movement, so it becomes very exciting, it raises questions, oh shit, what now, twists and turns, etc., and it leads to a certain kind of satisfying end, where yes, maybe there is a victory, which is very difficult to attain, but it is attained, and therefore there is a lot of impact. Yeah. So ये clinically अगर बोलूं तो ये है. अब ये algorithm अगर मैं AI में डाल दूं तो क्या वो बना सकता है? जरूर बना सकता है. वो 2 दिन में बना सकता है. उसके वो नहीं है. उसके बाद थोड़ा सा ट्वीक करके उसको डाल दो. Now what is it that is the problem? अगर आप बोलोगे बन रहा है ना तो why are you screaming? होने दो. सस्ते में हो रहा है, एफिशिएंटली हो रहा है, होना चाहिए. आप बोल रहे हो कि भैया मैकेनाइजेशन नहीं होना चाहिए, डिजिटल नहीं आना, टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं आनी चाहिए. बट चक्कर ये हो रहा है कि द एसेंशियल whole game, if I might say, of writing a script is to turn an experience into an expression. What is the experience? The experience is in the imagination of the writer as the writer feels it. Every line that we write, every phrase that we write, every action, every choice that the character makes is something that we dwell on the character and we feel that character's feeling within ourselves. Yes, because the character has been in our psyche. As a result of which we relate to that, we imagine, yeah, this is what he's feeling. There is a whole relationship of empathy, human empathy, which is taking place, as a result of which it's coming. So the plot logic is there, but the plot logic is essentially there to carry that experience, the human experience, you see, that feeling. अब इसमें ये होता है कि if there is an AI thing coming in, there is plot logic, because that can be fed in. ये difficulty हुई तो ये करेगा. These are the characteristics of Thanos, or whatever the name is, Thanatos. वो है Thanos. वो करेगा, ये वो करेगा, ये वो करेगा. तो as a result of which, ये इस तरीके से behave करेगा. Yeah, you can predict that with the plot logic, but you cannot talk about creativity, because creativity involves a discovery of the human condition which is hidden within. AI doesn't know how to do that. So it dehumanizes the experience of the story. It creates a spectacle, it creates a certain thrill, which is essentially to do with plot progression. You see? So hoga ye, the danger is not so much, Namrata, what you and I might face. The danger is that the whole culture of viewership and the expectations of the viewer begins to change here. Then you get used to that. Okay, yeah. So the depth which a story form, such an exciting story form called cinema, is able to offer you, is able to impart to you, that value is gone. वो value चली जाती है उसके अंदर से. Therefore you sit there and you enjoy yourselves. अरे बहुत मजा आ गया, अरे क्या मतलब twist and turn था. Your whole viewership culture, your expectation, your market, so to say, veers towards that, because that is how it goes. अगर वही available है तो आप उससे फिर लुत्फ लेने लगते हैं.
So it's essentially a dehumanization of
Story.
viewership as well, yeah, you know.
Of viewership, exactly. जो
So
life,
consumption ban raha hai rather than something which we.
rather than experience.
Yes, yeah.
The experiential writing goes away, because what is being shared, the experience of the writer is being conveyed to the experience, is becoming the experience of the viewer. So ये experience, that is how our lives get enriched with stories. हम Shakespeare पढ़ते हैं, महाभारत पढ़ते हैं, okay. Our lives get enriched, प्रेमचंद पढ़ते हैं, क्योंकि गहराई से एक ऐसा न्यूआंस निकल के आता है. क्या बात है. Now वो AI जो है मरते मर जाएगा, वो मंटो नहीं लिख पाएगा.
True.
लेकिन वो मंटो का प्लॉट लिख पाएगा. खोल दो का प्लॉट वो लिख लेगा, लेकिन उसके अंदर जो फीलिंग जो है, जो लेयर जो आ रहा है, जो कॉम्प्लेक्सिटी जो आ रही, वो नहीं आएगी. That won't come at all. So as a result of it, what is happening is that it becomes increasingly more and more superficial. Okay, with all, and then you add masala, you add the twists and turns, you add that kind of thrill, which absolutely can be done. But baat wo reh jati. Then this is what you expect from that, and that. So it actually impoverishes the audience. That is the big danger. Writers may go out of a job, etc. WJs at the moment fighting for it, and there are very specific points. on which they are fighting. They're saying that AI cannot be used to write or even rewrite literary material which we're giving it. Material which has been produced by our members, I mean, that is MBA, which is covered in the end, cannot be used to train AI. Okay, we don't want to cooperate with that. We don't want this to increase because we know which way it will go. अब अगर आप ये देखो जो आप बात कर रहे थे कि 60s में कैसे होता था, 70s में कैसे, तो वहां अगर मैं आपको शाहपुर जी पालन जी और इन लोगों का उदाहरण दे रहा हूं कि भैया कहानी को लेके वो उस पर पैसा डालते थे, तो उनको मालूम नहीं है कौन स्टार है, कौन आने वाला है, क्या आने वाला है. They have no idea, they haven't thought of that. वो डालते थे उसके ऊपर पैसे. ये मैं कह रहा हूं, that whole thing कि भैया कहानी कहने के लिए हम जा रहे हैं, we are here to tell a good story. People today will speak about that. They don't mean that, they don't know what that means. They don't experience that. That is the picture.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Anjum, couple of more things which I wanted to kind of have a word with you on. One, you mentioned about credit arbitration within the, system within the Screenwriters Association, and with contractual issues kind of getting sometimes into legal tangles. I wanted to know that beyond fighting for the just contracts, is there a way Screenwriters Association has somehow streamlined a process of legal recourse for writers as well? Basically that. And after that, I wanted to kind of end on a larger question, which I wanted to ask you is this, and it's a constant debate, कि artist अपनी एक दुनिया में रहता है, unionization, activism, politics से परे रहता है. And we kind of very specifically, you kind of raise the issue of unions as well. I mean, how significant is for the community of artists to get into the activist mode? Part 2 of the question, but first tell me the streamlining of the legal part of it.
See, Namrata, it's unavoidable today that if the law affects your position in the filmmaking process, then in which case you need to be aware of the law. Because it is a contract that you sign. It's not just कि अच्छा भाई आ जा ये पैसे ले और तू लिख ले. No, there is a whole elaborate contract because there is a question of transfer of rights, there is exploitation of rights, and there's royalty and all kinds of things come into the picture. So the writer has to be aware of that. Now, can the writer become aware of that? No. Some of us, because out of necessity, have become quasi-lawyers. Okay, I mean, I understand the Copyright Act, I think, as much as is necessary for a writer and contracts. Can't expect everybody to go around studying that. So the union comes into play. What we have as a blanket advised all our writer members that before signing a contract, either show it to your own lawyer or come to SWA. We have a full-time legal officer. We will give you free service. She will look at the contract. She will advise you. Now, she won't come to the table and negotiate with you because we have like thousands and thousands of members. But she will give you a clear indication of where is it that certain things are illegal, certain things are unfair, and how you need to negotiate for that. That's a free service that we offer, number one. Number two, in case of a dispute, if you feel that your credit has been denied to you unfairly, or if there has been a breach of contract, you find yourself in a position where in conflict with either the producer or with another writer or with anybody else, that you have a grievance, then that complaint can be brought to SWA, and we have a dispute settlement committee which has been around for a very long time, okay, headed by senior people, advised by the in-house lawyer and certain external lawyers who we time to time, of services we avail of, who's. So, ye ek legal, again, help milta hai. What the dispute settlement committee is, it's a mediating body because we don't have jurisdictional authority and there's no enforcement leverage that we do have. But yes, we do mediate, and there's a credibility which SWA has built up. So a lot of the producers now treat it fairly. They know that we're not here merely to, support our members. We are here to ensure that something is, whatever is decided has to be fair. So ye ek service hum log de rahe. Iske uprant, third thing is that if the matter cannot be resolved by SWA, since as I told you, we don't have enforcement authority. We can't insist to the producer, this will be followed. He'll say, bhai, hum nahi manta. then in which case we encourage our writers to go to court. Now they don't have the money all the time. So we have this legal aid fund in which we actually offer. Now we've just revised it. So up to 5 lakh or 50% of the legal cost, whichever is lower, is what SWA offers. Matlab, on its own side, it's not a loan. It's actually a grant. It's actually an aid that we are giving you. We're encouraging you to go to court because you must be aware of your rights. And for your own self, if not for the collective, you have to be an activist. You can't say, unhone nahi diya, to main kya kar sakta hu. No, you have to fight for yourself. So be an activist for your own rights, at least. So we are encouraging this because the more such people become aware of their rights and become active about protecting their rights, it affects the community anyway. So by you fighting for your right, you're doing a big service to your fraternity. It's all because it'll bring about all these small sort of globules will coalesce into a sea change. I mean, it'll finally mutate. Yeah. While the SWA collectively bargains. So these are the 3-4 ways in which we offer legal help. Number 4, as an educational initiative, we have a lot of workshops which actually inform and educate our members about their rights. Now, today, for example, 3 to 6 at the Celebration Club in Lokhandwala, I have this workshop, which is the 6th in the series that we have had, called Negotiating Fair Contracts. How to understand the relevant clauses of the Copyright Act. What are the pain points of the existing contract? What are the alternatives that we are offering? Yeah, that. And I keep a senior lawyer with me. Now, all those lawyers, as you will be amused to know, are all those very senior lawyers who actually defend corporates. So I said, you come onto our platform. You come onto our platform and you advise our members about what their rights are. Okay, while I'll be there. So it is also that
you are subverting from within.
Try every trick that I'm capable of with my limited intelligence, okay, to ensure that. Number 6, I've had a meeting with several big law firms and lawyers in big law firms who actually represent corporates to sensitize them, to at least inform them about what our pain points are and what our negotiations are likely to be. So that when they come on the opposite side of the table and sit opposite, our team and myself, they're already aware of that. They're already aware that this is what we're fighting for. And these 2, 3, 4, 5 things, we're not going to back off. So please be ready, orient your mind towards that and let's have a discussion there. So when they sit with us in public, when they sit with me in public, on the platform, in front of all those 300, 400 members who are there, and they admit that, yeah, this is fair, what you're asking for in terms of credit, yeah, it is fair, but I hope the system will work that you're proposing, etc. But it is fair. In which case, okay, you already are sensitized to that. So we're trying in whichever way possible. Then individually, whenever it is that I have shared a platform with any of these producers, of course, I mean, I'm constantly like a stuck record, talk about writers' rights all the time. People, I think, are beginning to find it extremely boring and monotonous. Yeah. But that's the job, to ensure that you create this clear message goes out towards the corporates that, boss, we're beginning to hurt and now we're beginning to react to that. Now we're no longer containing that pain. We want a change in that because it's not acceptable to us. So बच्चे बड़े हो गए basically.
बच्चे बड़े हो गए, so I think the industry would also should kind of keep pace and grow along. One personal query that I had is the scope, the ambit of Screenwriters Association. And when I say that, like in my head, perhaps the fact that it is Bombay based, it kind of seems like, Bollywood may be the primary component. But as we know, Tamil film industry, Malayalam film industry, Telugu cinema, Kannada cinema, I mean, flourishing, as big in their own, pockets and even globally as Bollywood as an entity. How much is the synergy with a language industry, so to speak?
I'll tell you. See, the context is, Namrata, that India makes films in about 17 languages, okay, across the country. We have writers associations in different regions. Now, the active ones are unfortunately only 4. There's the TCW, which is the Telugu Cine Writers Association, which is based in Hyderabad. Okay, there. Then you have SWAN, which is the South Indian Writers Association based in Chennai. which is headed by Bhagiraj. This one is headed by Pachuri Gopalakrishna. Then you have FEFCA, which is the Malayalam thing, based in Trivandrum. FEFCA Writers Association, sorry. And you have SW. Now, Telugu, Tamil as well as Malayalam, they cover their respective languages. Kannada is forming an association. We're helping. Bengal was there, but something has gone wrong there. Now, barring these 5, all the rest of the languages, by and large, come into our lap. We're supposed to deal with them. Punjabi, Bhojpuri, Rajasthani, Marathi, Hindi, Gujarati, Konkani, all these fall in our lap. Okay, because Bombay is the hub, as you know, of even the Bhojpuri filmmakers are here. So you have 4 producers associations. So it is huge. Now we are in touch with all of them, not just in touch, but we formed this Indian Screenwriters Front in 2015, which we are the convener of that. SWA, because we took the lead in that. So SWA is the convener of that. And TCWA, SWAN, FEFCA, and the others who we called informally, we are all part of that. So whatever action we take, like when for the Cinematography Act or for the Copyright Act or for our Copyright Society, when the application went in and they had asked for the copyright rules, the government had asked for, submissions and all. So as a joint submission, we would send. That SWA would send, but representing all these associations. So that synergy is there. But they are also waiting for us to make this breakthrough. And that then says, look up to us, because effectively, perhaps because of our size or because we are a little more proactive about this, that we've taken the lead. So they're all waiting. Once the breakthrough takes place here, then at least it makes it easier for them to push through. And if we are not able to make a breakthrough, then it becomes a little problematic for them. So you see a lot there. On how
so you are in the middle with WGA on one hand and the the repercussions of WGA through you all the way to the various industries. Great. Thanks so much, Anjum. You've been very eloquent and you made things very easy, which somehow, somewhere from a distance may seem very daunting. And I hope this kind of would be of use, not just to the industry, but to the viewers as well. We all have been wondering about what's happening, with picketing news coming from LA. And, I was in Cannes and I saw, actors themselves talking about Paul Dano talking about how he would go back to LA and kind of, protest and strike work. So it's kind of cleared up many things in my head also. Thanks so much for sparing all the time, and especially when you're not really feeling all that well. Thank you so much. Thanks, Anjum.
And thank you very much, Namrata, for taking such a keen interest in this and devoting a segment of your series to this. I'm very
Thank you so much.